Okay, I'd like to call the meeting start at 6:03, and our first item is introduction of any late items. Do we have any late additions?
No.
No. Okay. On to item 2, the adoption of the last meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read that and okay with those minutes?
Mhm.
Any motion to adopt? I'll second. On to section 3. Do we have any public comments?
Nope.
No public comments. On to section 4, staff referral, parking in the cove.
I don't see Doug here yet.
Okay,
So do we want to maybe come back to that? I can keep an eye on the waiting room.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, are we able to jump to item 5, council referral with Drew?
Yeah, I'm ready if you guys will if I can go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, guys. So this is referral back of the all the comments to edit the transportation plan, that's our active transportation plan. So that draft active transportation plan was shared with and so this just backing up a bit, giving the history. So that draft plan was shared with multiple BIM committees at a committee of the whole meeting in January 15th, start of the year. Then was discussed further at subsequent meetings of those committees. A 25-page document on proposed edits to the active transportation plan was compiled by staff and was sent to ISL, who produced the plan. But it was rejected for being too vague and contradictory. And the bottom line being that there was only 3 hours left in the budget for further edits. And they requested that the list be reduced down to 1 page. So staff have reduced the comments down to a several page list now. And also tried to make the request as clear and concise as possible in the spirit of keeping it within the budget and accommodating as many changes as possible. And yeah, this is something it did take me a while. We're coming back to this over the year as kind of the first work I've ever done on a transportation plan. So there was some learning curve there, but I'm pretty happy with the list now. And again, in that limited time we have left. So it has been shared with ISL, and they've confirmed that while the list is longer than 1 page, it's specific enough and it'll be doable within the remaining time we have in the budget. So yeah, right now I'm sharing this with BIMTAC for your review and as a last chance to add any other last desired edits, anything you want to see. If there's none, then that list will be shared with council before being sent to ISL to make that changes to the plan, and then the plan being adopted. And I definitely want to thank everyone on their past discussions on the topic. I really tried to accommodate everyone's points, and ultimately the comments that were the most clear and concise were of course the easiest to incorporate into direct edits of the plan, and then longer form comments such as ones that suggested, say, like additional traffic studies on the island. That's of course outside the scope of the remaining budget we had, but definitely still extremely valuable and interesting comments for my knowledge and things that can be factored into future studies on the topic. And so yeah, thanks everyone again for your past discussions. And so yeah, be sure to speak up now in this meeting if you have anything to add there, or contact me afterwards if you have any last conclusions for the plan.
Any comments, Tim?
First of all, I think you did an amazing job, Drew. It was quite a hodgepodge, and everything you've suggested here makes very good sense to me. And a shout out to Alex Jurgensen for his additions, which all seem to make a lot of sense. A couple of sort of minor, but I think important things that I picked up on is if the note on page 15.4, which is at the bottom of page 10 of our package, it says Grafton Road and Cardina Drive, the following intersection, Grafton Road and Cardina Drive. And it's actually not Grafton Road there, it's Trunk Road. And I think it creates confusion because it's very clear on both map and on our maps that Grafton Road starts up at the intersection by the school, and the road up until there is Trunk Road. So I just think that should be corrected to Trunk Road.
Okay.
And there's also on page 15 So the top of page 11, the paragraph, page 15, add the following to cost estimates bubble. And again, it says Grafton Road and Cardina Drive. So that should be Trunk Road as well.
Good point.
Then the other one is there's a number of there's Cardina Road and there's Cardina Drive. And on page 2, the first paragraph, Cardina Road should be Cardina Drive. So Cardina Drive goes by the Hearth and the little blue cottage. And then after it passes the circle and turns to the right, then it becomes Cardina Road. And so there's a couple of occasions in here where it says Cardina Road and it should be Cardina Drive. And one of them is on page 2 and one on page 54, as far as I can tell.
Okay, thanks. I'll double and triple check all those road names because that is, yeah, those were all errors. You're right.
Other than that, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you too. I know it was a lot to incorporate, and I also thought you did a good job of capturing what was important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also thought the list looked good. I didn't go back and cross-reference to all the comments you received, but the list that came out of it seemed concise and understandable.
Nice. Thank you.
Make modifications.
Sorry, Drew, I may have missed it, but have you sent them the revised list?
I've shared it with them just so that they've seen the length of it. I just told them hold off till we've shared this with the committee, but yeah.
Okay.
So they've seen it and they're saying it's okay. They can do it within the budget.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So are we okay to say that there's no further comments from the committee?
I am.
Yeah.
I am also.
Yep.
If I may.
Okay. Yep.
I found it a little disconcerting to attach the old unedited version, and as I was going through it, it was like, wait a minute, this, so I'm not sure how we can help council. It's an 80-page document that do we do a mock-up of the one with changes, or give them the list, give council the list and say that these are the changes that we want, or somehow give them a heads up. They don't necessarily have to read the entire 82 pages. They'll get bogged down, I think. In terms of presenting, this list is really good. And I think it answers all the issues that were raised. And if I don't know that council necessarily wants to go through the process. Any ideas how to present this?
Well, I mean, the list is one way of doing it. It's just a condensed list of changes, or you comment on the original document would be my two thoughts.
Yeah, I did check council's the motion or the recommendation from January 15th from the committee of the whole meeting, and I think it was that we come up with a list of edits and kind of come back to council with it and then send it to ISL. That's what I was following in that motion.
Okay. This makes for a very long read.
Right.
All right, mission accomplished. Thank you very much, Drew.
No problem.
Huge
Thank you guys.
help.
Okay, did we want to circle back to item 4 with parking in the cove?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry, I was a few minutes late getting into the meeting. This is just a kind of a temperature check for the committee to see if there's if this is a topic of interest that we could pursue together more. I was recently contacted by some folks who live in Snug Cove. They live in Village Square, and they're an older couple. They have some mobility issues, and their big concern is parking in the cove. And the long and short of it is they were ultimately asking, is there any possibility of having some kind of resident parking permits for people, you know, not necessarily for all residents, but for people that have accessibility issues, people who can't walk long distances, elders. So they had floated that idea by me, and I just wanted to sort of bring it forward to you guys as sort of just to get your opinion on the matter and see if you think that's something we should think about moving forward with. And that's sort of on the heels of also, I've been contacted multiple times just about generally resident only parking in the cove, or parking enforcement in the summer, all of these sort of parking related issues. But mainly, I think the one that's the most important is, do we want to look at helping out our community members in need with special parking privileges in the code? I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that, or if this is an appropriate arena for that conversation, but I was hoping it might be, and that you guys might have some guidance for me.
I have one general thought, and it's not super specific to the request, but to the topic of restricting parking to resident only, and that it seems to be that in the last, I don't know, 10 plus years, a lot of developments are being approved with a reduced number of parking spots. And the logic is always kind of in the tone of we're not catering to the car in the cove. So it seems odd to go down the path of restricting parking that is available now, if on the other hand, developments are being approved without the normal standard of parking spots. And then more specifically to the request, I guess my question is, would they be served by a handicapped spot? Would that be helpful?
That probably would be helpful. I think I can only think of a couple handicap spots in the cove right now, so that is useful. In line with what they were saying to me, I don't believe at that point they were asking for a specific place to be set aside as restricted to specific residents. I know that some of you might be familiar with sort of across from the Village Baker on Dorman Road, there's a section in front of those few houses there that says resident only parking. There was a program in place many years ago where those residents paid an annual fee to have an actual parking pass that they put on their dash, and that persisted for 6 or 7 years, I think, and then it kind of faded away. I don't know if there was turnover in the residents. I haven't seen anybody wanting to bring that back. I don't think having a restricted area that's specific to residents would be a good solution for the reasons you've said. I think I think more to the point would be having a way for these people to avoid the enforcement that comes with parking in a place that is normally a 2-hour parking, a 3-hour parking, this kind of a thing, so that they would have kind of a more opportunities to find places to park. You know, this would have an impact on retail potentially and all that, but that's all part of the conversation. But I agree with you. I don't think having a set aside area for that sort of parking would do anybody any favors in the code.
Judy?
For Village Square, I mean, that's a private development, and they've got the excess parking that's just down the other side of past the Village Baker. And I think that in terms of trying to, I think for the residents above the shops, that's a constant problem in terms, especially if they've got mobility issues. So, you know, there have been times when residents have parked in the retail areas outside the post office and things like that, and it's the management that tell them that they can't park there and move them
Right.
on.
Yeah.
And they, you know, they have a limited number of spaces. So I think that that's, in terms of that area, that's an issue between the residents and the management. And I wouldn't want to necessarily get into that. That's a poorly designed parking lot, and you know, all the huge big trucks that are in the spots that say small cars. I feel sorry for them that they can't read. But you know, in terms of figuring out in the rest of the cove on the public roads, I don't know how we would, you know, there's problems enough in terms of getting through the ferry lineup to any parking. And, you know, the Renison lot, if that ever gets developed and we lose that parking that's available overflow for the general store and just the general chaos, I think that that's a tough one to dig into and try to manage. I know that there have you know, for me, when I needed the disability parking areas, that there weren't enough of them. So they were still quite a distance. There's the one in front of Out of the Blue or the Seabreeze building, and there's another one that's down, I think, in front of Tippy's, maybe, and another one that's at the end near the traffic circle. That's about it. And that's quite limited. So maybe that's something we could look at.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Judy, about, you know, Village Square should really be solving these issues with their own tenants, because they do tell them not to park in the retail parking. Yeah, I don't want to turn into a discussion about, sorry to interrupt. I don't want to go into a whole discussion of the whole parking difficulties of the code, because we'd be here for hours, but that is absolutely part of it.
Tim?
Well, I agree with Judy. I don't think the reason we're going to less parking in new developments is because we want to encourage people to use alternatives to their car. And parking is one of the disincentives, if you will. The lack of availability of parking helps people look towards that alternative route. It also requires that we provide alternatives. And we've been talking about improving the transit system for quite a while. And you know, we're I think still working on this rural transit solutions fund. And so for the time being, I don't think we want to make it easier for locals to park in the cove. But I do think if we can say that if someone with a disabled sticker in their window parks in any parking spot in the 2 hour, that they should be able to stay there for longer if they need to. And that would, so basically it would turn all parking spaces into disabled parking if necessary. And then, yeah, I don't know if then you would need to add more disabled only, but that's another option.
That's a really good idea. I like that too.
What is the 2 hour parking limits we have? Are they just within the business day?
I mean, technically it's 2 hours is 2 hours. Realistically, the enforcement happens only during business hours. You know, after 4:30 in the afternoon, it's pretty much a free for all. But at that point, of course, it's kind of moot most of the time, other than those couple of summer months where it is mayhem.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's fine. You'll see driving around right now, there's parking available as soon as the summer peak goes. But yeah.
Judy?
I think it's also, I have a vague recollection of that. This is something that might have come up in our strategic thinking. or planning. So it might be something, Doug, that would be helpful rather than a suggestion coming from the committee, if it came from staff in terms of an issue that council should look at in terms of strategic planning. So I think it's been touched on. I can't really remember details, but I know
That's a good
Andrew
idea.
was talking once about maybe having pay parking. So it's the issue's simmering.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
I think it's a good topic, but I'd be hesitant to make any recommendation on a small portion of the topic. I think viewing it as a whole is probably the right way to go.
Right. That's a big project, that's for sure. Okay, well, I don't want to take up any more of your guys' time, but that was really, really helpful for me. I'm going to take away these ideas and see what we can move forward with. But thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 6, we have time put aside to discuss the Rural Transit Solution Fund. Judy?
So I need to apologize both to this group and to council. I've done some work on this, and Tim set up a telephone call with Patrick Wheeler so that we had some input from him. But I have a draft that needs more work, and I haven't had a chance today to get to it. So I was hoping of maybe doing something last minute, which is not fair, but I'm not ready. So
Okay. Do we want to move it to the next meeting, or would you like some time at the end just to discuss the topic after everything else?
what do you think, Tim?
I think it needs quite a bit more work. And I have to be honest, I'm struggling to see how this is going to work. I'm not sure a big planning exercise with an external consultant is the way to go. I'm wondering if it isn't more of a BC Ferries, TransLink, and us solution with TransLink, working on the.
I want the feds to knock us down, not internally. So let's if you could save that until we get a chance to actually talk about something.
Okay.
Save that wet blanket for later.
Okay, well, let's shelve this one for now. So new business, item 7, we have an email from me, which I sent just so I wouldn't forget. I noticed that my Compass card transfer wasn't working as it was supposed to. I haven't been organized enough to be keeping track since I noticed that to see if it was a continued problem. But I did want to discuss if we collectively or institutionally remembered how that arrangement got set up and whether or not that was a relationship or an arrangement that required maintenance. That TransLink knows that we're supposed to have this extended transfer time when coming to Bowen, and maybe my travel was just an erroneous failure, or if there was something that needed to be fixed. Drew, have you got have you talked to TransLink at all about those sort of topics?
No, sorry, I haven't discussed that with them lately.
Do you have any idea of what slot that might fit into? Is there a conversation with TransLink?
Sorry, what do you mean by like slot into?
Well, at some point before I was part of this committee, somebody must have lobbied TransLink to extend the transit transfer times when going to Bowen Island. I mean, it's stated on our website, I believe, on the municipal website, that the transfer, if you take a bus to Bowen, you have an extended period where your transfer is valid. I didn't imagine that TransLink came up on that on their own. And Bowen just happened to post it on our website. I figured Bowen advocated for that transfer extension, and it was obliged. Maybe it still is, and failed me one day. But I wondered if we should bring that comment back up. But I have no idea where that conversation would have happened, with whom that would have happened, or how we would refresh it. Judy?
That link that you put in your email and how it got onto the Bowen webpage, is there some way of tracing back the corporate memory in terms of when that was posted and looking at maybe minutes of this committee or council? Sarah, do you know? Deer in the
No,
headlights.
not right now, but I can definitely find out.
Can that be traced back with that? Okay.
Potentially. I can
So
find out for sure.
let's try and do that. But
Okay.
Andrew might know. Tim, you've been meeting with them, haven't you?
We did have a meeting, that didn't come up, but we could go back to the planners that we met with, and we could get Aaron Deems, the public relations officer, to set that up. But just to be clear, Tyler, are you talking about if you take the bus to Horseshoe Bay and you get on the ferry, and then you want to get on Bowen Transit, that you don't have to pay again, your card still works? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so whenever you use your transit fare saver card, Compass card, from the time you swipe it and you're charged, I think the standard is, I can't remember now, is it 90 minutes or 60 minutes, that you can make as many transfers as you want without being dinged a fare again. And then to Bowen Island, that time was extended. So even if you were outside the normal, for argument's sake, 90 minutes, when you went to take the blue bus on Bowen, as long as you were within 120 minutes, you didn't pay the fare again.
Right. Okay.
And
180 minutes.
180 minutes. So I just noticed it. It didn't seem to work for me that day, and I felt like it hadn't been working for me most of the summer, because the trip times were so bad. But I thought, if it's not working, or I thought, A, we should confirm that it is or is not working, and B, if it's not working, it shouldn't be on our website, and we should try and get that reinstated.
Yep. I think it's a good point.
So just so I can be clear here, what happens if you get on the bus on Bowen, having come from downtown to Horseshoe Bay? What happens when you go to use your card? Do you have to pay again?
Yeah. So if you look at the page 104 of our agenda, so that what Tyler's done is, I don't know what bus stop 54441 is and 54382, but presumably at 501, you're getting on someplace else and you're tapping in, and then you're transferring at 724 on the same day. Bus stop 117. So those are the two charges, right?
That's right. I haven't even refreshed myself on my own email, but that was
There you go.
the gist of it. Yeah.
And I don't know what the difference is, but it's, 2 hours and 23 minutes. So however many minutes that is, 180, 212, 214, something like that. So the time limit should be
100,
the time limit should be
143.
extended to 250 minutes. Whatever.
That's
Yeah,
140 something there.
yeah. So I had thought that I had almost 40 minutes to spare on the transfer, and just noticed it dinged my credit card again.
Yeah.
or my Compass card. So anyway, I don't think this is an urgent issue. It's mostly a summer issue when it takes more than 2 hours to get to Bowen on a bus. But it would be good to follow up one way or the other.
I think, whether it's minor or major, I think that adding them all up is important in terms of what we were trying to do with, getting
Well,
better service. So
it
that
does
should be a
does
easy one.
matter
Yeah.
because if you have a family, multiple people commuting, and you start paying for 4 bus fares a day, it's
Yeah.
basically getting pretty close to a car fare.
Yeah.
So it does add up. Okay, I think that's all the time that one needs. But maybe we'll talk about it next meeting unless somebody has an idea for an action item.
Can we pass this email on to mayor and council in terms of a letter so that it gets onto that agenda? And we can pull it and just speak to it, not to send it back, but to for the mayor's council on TransLink.
Do we want to just forward my email?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Or Judy, did you mean to get it on the agenda, like as a, what is it, part 12 or section 12?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just golf it over to the mayor to bring it up at the mayor's TransLink committee. Or
So
Tim, if you want to talk to the planners you've talked to before.
Yeah, I think we can be more surgical on that. It's not something that should go to the mayor's committee, I don't think.
Okay.
So I think actually if we could take that letter, I could forward that. So is that letter in our package? Did I miss that?
Yes, page 104.
Page 104. Okay. Well, I can copy that and send it to Aaron and just ask him who we should ask about that.
All right.
Sounds good. Okay. On to item 8. So we have Ferry Advisory Committee update, and that is me. There are 2 letters requesting BC Ferry's ridership data, and I think both of them were interested in this last summer. The summer data period, I think, typically ends at the beginning of November. It's 6 months. So I wasn't too optimistic that we would get that data right now before reaching out to BC Ferries, but I believe both I and Drew, was it you at BIM also talking to Tamara about the data? I think
Daniel was, yeah.
Daniel was.
Yeah.
So I think we were both discussing with Tamara about getting the data. She has not provided the data, but she was interested in what format what people wanted to do with the data. I shared some examples of community generated reports on ridership data. Some of them came up during the park discussions, and some of them have been created pivot tables for the last 8 years. And BC Ferries was interested in just providing the data in the format that people wanted to see. So they had some interest there. I also thought that providing the data was a good level of transparency because it shows the record of all the delayed sailings. And if you have a particular day that you thought was awful and you wanted to make sure it was properly accounted for, having that public data allows you to go cross-check their books. So I don't have an update other than that background. I could respond to the 2 emails and just provide a similar update. Does anybody have thoughts on that part of the FAC update? Just the data requests? Okay. Further to that, I've been in discussions with BC Ferries on a bunch of different topics. One of them being the poor on-time performance, and they, starting at around the AGM in August, assigned the improvement of the on-time performance, or I guess it's the evaluation of what's happening, to a group of people who are expected to report back to BC Ferries. It might be the end of November. I'm hoping to be involved or introduced to that team for a discussion before they have something to issue publicly, but once they've kind of got some data. And the idea for this group is to take a look at what would need to be done to try and improve Horseshoe Bay on-time performance, and specifically Route 8 US, and see if there's anything that could be done, even if you include outside the box thinking. So significant changes to the way things are done, or perhaps changes to terminals, or anything supposed to be on the table for this discussion. So I think that's a positive, because that's something that we've been asking for quite a while, is to take a look at this issue, and hopefully something actionable comes from it. But because of this effort, and then their larger public engagement effort of this past year wrapping up, I don't think we're going to get a fall ferry advisory committee meeting this year. Other updates: I did attend the AGM and the meetings surrounding that. It was largely focused on their system-wide visioning exercise, this larger year-long public engagement. Not as much time put aside to discussing specific issues. However, there was, I did get good FaceTime with senior management at BC Ferries, and did feel that they understood how bad Route 8 was performing, especially in the summer, and that I felt that they understood that that was a real problem that needed to be addressed. But no promises of anything specific so far. Any questions? Betty?
Yeah, I just looking at sort of the graph with a lot of years in there. This was obviously like the worst. Do you have a gut feeling for like what's specifically causing it, or some ideas about where they might tackle changing in order to, is there any hope for us?
Well, I think it's the ridership. I think it's the volume that really compounds all the small problems. The time, oh, it's such a can of worms. If we go back to previous efforts to improve the Bowen Island service, there were things like the trial of the 2-lane loading. So at that time, the conclusion was that the loading time on Bowen Island wasn't contributing to any delays significantly. And so the effort was shelved, because they didn't see it as being something that would improve on-time performance. Since then, they carried on with a schedule with whatever it is, 10 to 15 minute turnaround times between sailings, and have consistently not been able to achieve that, or even close to that, through the entire summer months. And when you sit there and watch it, it's often there's some unexpected occurrence, even if it's a 5-minute delay from a vehicle not starting, or name anything that can happen to a BC Ferries loading procedure that starts a cascade of poor performance. And when they have heavy passenger and vehicle traffic all day, it just gets worse. And once the schedule completely falls apart, we just keep getting the short end of the stick all day until we're having sailings canceled. So in discussions with their operations people about what can be done, the obvious bare minimum suggestion was to adopt a schedule that they could keep at least at some level of reliability so that people who are using transit or making connections can plan around something, because having absolutely no schedule makes that very difficult. Then the frank discussion was that likely means losing a sailing each day. So just accepting that there's one fewer sailing. But I think that starts to encroach on their minimum number of sailings for the year. I think they weren't sure, but they thought that was going to be an issue for them this year, that they weren't providing their minimum number of sailings. So that might not even be fully on the table. So then in brainstorming what else could be done, I had a discussion about that I thought that they should spend time trying to come up with some root cause analysis of what's going wrong. And it may be a lot of small things that need to be changed. It may be on Bowen Island, we need to better manage our pedestrian crossings and our pedestrian traffic, and discourage people from taking selfies in front of the ferry when it should be unloading. Because it seems to be a bit of a death by 1,000 cuts in the summer. Like every single thing is going wrong.
I mean, it seems like it would be helpful even to see whether that, I have a hunch that there's more slowdown on the Bowen side than on the Horseshoe Bay side, based on nothing. But if it is, it sort of lends some weight to this notion that we need some kind of ferry marshaling person who, you know, gets things going when somebody parks in the lane that's supposed to be moving, or this business of big crowds of people crossing when the ferry's loading and just stopping everything. That sort of thing could be addressed if it was needed. And I would also say, I'm not so sure people would disagree with having one later at night sailing than we do now. Given that we don't have the, the midnight water tax anymore, lots of people scramble for that last ferry. So maybe they could keep the same number of sailings and just run it longer. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out, but be nice to have a few strategies.
John?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm unmuted, good. I'm inclined to agree with Betty that as bad as things are over on the other side, we're not doing ourselves any favors here. But some of that, and I realize that I doubt they're ever gonna take over marshaling on the road. It's our road. They're not gonna mess with that, and that's probably a losing battle. But there are things that they can be doing, like shooing people off the ferry. They consistently, you can hear the thing going off, the announcement, please go down, please go down. And there's always people up top when the cars are ready to go off. And then they let them off anyway in front of the cars. So they can be marshaling on the boat itself is one thing. And that, like you said, a death by 1,000 cuts, and you're dead on with that. It's 1 minute here, 2 minutes there, 3 minutes there. Pretty soon it's 8 minutes. And 4 sailings later, it's an hour and a half kind of thing. So like we got to take our share of it, better signage and maybe some marshaling on our part, but they've got to take their share of it too on the boat and start doing something with that.
Okay, Tim, then me.
So at UBCM, Andrew and Judy and I met at BC Ferry's invitation to Andrew. We had a meeting on the Thursday afternoon, and with 3 people from the communications team. And it was Morningstar, Pinto, Lindsay Matthews, and Jeff Root. And I thought it was a good meeting. And one of the things that came up was that they are talking about a little committee or working group made up of some BC Ferries operations people. Tyler, they mentioned that you were going to be on that committee. It was basically going to be that Horseshoe Bay and Route 8 brainstorming committee that would have representation from Bowen Island and from BC Ferries, and maybe from some people who just use the ferry. And that sounded very positive. So, Tyler, have you been asked about that?
Yeah, I've been told that I've been asked if I would participate, and I've said yes, but I don't know what form that takes at this point.
Yeah.
I'll probably expect to hear something at the end of this week. To discuss with that operational kind of core group that's trying to solve the Horseshoe Bay issue and Bowen Island. What I was going to say though is that when discussing extending our schedule, they basically have two shifts covering a 16-hour day. And if we start stretching things out and we trigger a third shift, it would be like an untenable increase in staff costs. So I think the service contract gives a minimum number of hours that the schedule must cover. It might be 17 and a half or something like that. And I think once we start talking about extending out past that, we'll probably get pushback.
Well, I just thought that all these issues that we've just been talking about, there's lots of good ideas, and I think we need a group that can actually discuss them and come up with some recommendations about what would be possible in terms of making changes. Because we just heard lots of good ideas, but we need some analysis of how it would work, whether BC Ferries could do it, as you mentioned, whether we can extend the schedule or that's going to cause a problem. What can we do about that problem? I've actually written and asked and offered to be on that group as well. I think we need 2 or 3 people from Bowen. I think that would help. And so I have some hope for that group. And at a minimum, I'm just going to keep pushing to make sure it happens.
Judy?
We met with the Minister of Transportation as well, and he was very well briefed, and it sounds like they do have data and information. He was saying that there was something about 70% in terms of or the 7th worst run or something. At any rate, I didn't take notes. Tim, you're the best note taker of that whole crowd, but it was a very now that minister is not running again, and there's the election, and we don't know what the results are going to be. But certainly the deputy minister and the ministers were very well briefed in terms of the problems that we've been having. And that's partly with respect to that letter writing campaign that came from, and on our last council agenda was a series of letters that came from business people that was and some other people with medical conditions that were very eloquent and very strong and very persuasive. So Andrew at one point was suggesting that, that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of a letter writing campaign. And if we pull out all the stops, then they're going to be getting, inundated. And I think that resonated with them. The BC Ferries asking to meet with us. I think Andrew had some meetings with operational people. And when we went to that Thursday afternoon, it was late in the day, late in the conference, and they kept us waiting. So they were, being all very cheery and friendful. They were I called them what did I call them? I can't remember, Tim.
Oh,
I was not happy when I walked into the room, and I will not be invited
I think
to
you
be on
used the
that
term.
task force.
I think you used the term spin doctors.
Spin doctors, that was the one. And they went through this. It was an hour-long meeting, and they just sort of were cheerleading in terms of just how bubbly and they wouldn't stop talking. And they started off by saying they really wanted to hear what our concerns were and they were there to listen, and then they wouldn't shut up. So by the time they finally turned to me and said, what is it? Anything else you'd like to add? And then I started to, I didn't pull my punches. So that set them back a little bit, and they started being much more honest in terms of what they were prepared to do and how difficult it was going to be, but they would put some effort into it. One of the things they talked about was that they're having to negotiate a new contract, so the minimum number of sailings may be an issue. The task force in Horseshoe Bay, I'm surprised it isn't up and running yet, but the other thing might be that this whole business about one of these letters is saying that their person is being told that they're going to have to do I think it was Cole. He's going to have to do an FOI request. And I think that if it's coming from the mayor and council, that we might be able to get around that as opposed to simply a private citizen. So I'd like to take that one up as well. But I think
So-
that it's common knowledge that it was a very, very bad summer and that there has to be some significant changes. And I think they're scrambling a little bit, but I think we're in a position to push and push hard. So for what it's worth.
I'll jump around a little bit for the request for information. They can get that information through me without submitting a Freedom of Information request. At least that's what I expect. It just doesn't normally come out until I think it's the end of this month. So I can respond and tell them that I expect they can get that without the Freedom of Information request. If they hesitate to provide it, I think even if I, as the FAC chair, request the information, I could probably get them to waive the fee for the Freedom of Information request. If for some reason they decide this year they don't want to provide the data. So I can reach out to the two letters and just let them know that I've sent the request along. I expect to get the data, but I don't have a firm update yet, so that they don't go spending hundreds of dollars to get an Excel sheet that should be available. So that's that part.
And I think there's more to that. If you have trouble getting it, then I think there's a deputy minister. Even though we're interregnum in the middle of a campaign and everything, I think that we've got the attention of the bureaucrats.
Sure, but this sheet is normal. Like this is something I've been sharing with these. Like Ken has got it multiple years in the past, and it comes out twice a year, and it's just split like November to May or whatever it is. So as far as I know, right now you can't get a sheet that includes October until the end of October, unless we're making some new request. So I think that we're going to get the data. I just don't think it's ready yet. That doesn't explain why we don't have the fall of like the uninteresting part of last year, because I don't have that one either yet. So I will follow up again, and I'll respond to those two letters. Back to your meeting, part of that's my fault because I requested that BC Ferries ask for a meeting with the municipality. Part of that is because I feel like the Ferry Advisory Committee is a little bit of a toothless gummy bear with no mandate to actually do anything. And our place in the world is to advise on minor schedule updates and hand dryer locations. So I think that the value is coming from the conversations that I'm privileged to have at things like the annual general meeting and when I get access to people. I've offered to be part of this working group and also to take the brunt of public engagement if there's been a history where BC Ferries doesn't come to us early, they come to us with their solution. And that's what they present to the public is not an engagement, it's an update. Hey, this is what we're going to do. I think that some of these problems are quite complicated and do need a collaborative approach. They may be afraid to do that. because there's so much pent up hostility, when they open the gates, nothing nice comes through. So I'm hoping that we have a productive meeting together, and I will offer to take things that have come up or topics where they want more information from the public and come out to the public myself, like as the FAC, and seek that input. And if we're not having a fall meeting with BC Ferries, I can get space at the library and host an FAC public meeting to get that input. And I've kind of passed along these as options to BC Ferries to get filtered but raw public input on ideas. So I'm optimistic that something positive is going to come out of it, and I know they're working on it, and the group does exist. I just think they want, or they've told me they want to have something put together before speaking with me, as in have their data and understand their own constraints as they see it before sitting down. So I don't know. I'm hoping by the next time we have a meeting, I'll have a more solid update on that topic. But there's been lots of, I skipped over a point. Back to the toothless as a gummy bear point and pushing them to speak with a municipality. If the FAC is not being involved in long-term planning historically, and they've been focusing our mandate on these minor issues, there needs to be some avenue for the municipality to be in these discussions with the province and BC Ferries. So what they've offered, like they asked me if I wanted to come to that meeting. I declined because I think that it's very easy for them to point to the FAC as, oh, we have this covered. We're talking with people, we're getting input, but they're not hearing input on these major decisions. So the letter writing campaign outside of the FAC, like coming from the municipality, was I think a good thing, because it kind of goes around that limited mandate that the FAC has. So I don't know who's the right person to have the actual meaningful conversations, but I think it's as they've defined it, it's not the Ferry Advisory Committee. But I'll keep trying my best. Any other ferry comments?
We also told them that you were a national treasure and that better not wear you out.
I don't know if I can live up to that one, but
we did raise three things at the Thursday meeting, and they were the things that were reflected in the letter writing campaign as well. And they were priority boarding for residents, lineup management on the Bowen side, and on-time performance. And I think those are going to be, I think, three things that that working group is going to take on, amongst other things.
I agree, except for the priority loading for residents. I doubt that will be in that mandate, because the line I've heard loud and clear is that will only come from provincial direction.
So we brought that up in our meeting with the Minister of Transportation, and I don't think it's the BC Ferries is saying that they can't do it because of something in their contract. Anyway, I think that's something to actually have a conversation about and get to the right people at the province, or maybe get the province and BC Ferries at the table with some Bowen people, and try to work through it, because it doesn't seem like a good argument against it.
Okay, I guess I'm not clear on what the suggested path there is. Like with the FAC, that kind of runs into a mandate wall. It's not in the service contract. It's not currently at their discretion. Therefore, they pull it off the table. So I think that conversation does need to be championed still by municipalities and regional partners that the care with the province and BC Ferries. I think this working group is going to be really focused on Horseshoe Bay and particularly Route 8's on-time performance and what can be done there.
Well, and on that sort of political front, I believe Mayor Leonard is working towards organizing a local regional group. So Sunshine Coast representatives, people from Gibson's, and then Bowen, and try to get at the political level, try to get some meetings with actual decision makers and people who can make things happen, maybe include the province. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult topic when you start to try and write out how that's going to work, because people want to get home on Bowen, but they also want their dinner guests to be able to get to Bowen and their relatives to come visit and their sister who babysits twice a week to come watch their kids, and none of those will fall under a resident only priority. So like I've tried to write out a suggestion for how you execute that, and I've not been able to come up with a brilliant, coherent plan on what exactly to ask for. What does resident priority mean? So I think that having a working group that can champion that idea and try and flesh out what exactly are we asking for? Is it just people with a driver's license that says Bowen Island? Is it just a property tax payer? Like who falls under that umbrella? Because it's not going to be everybody we want it to be all the time.
Well, the argument I've heard, or the suggestion I've heard, is that sure, it would be nice if friends and family could be included in that, but friends and family are not coming on a regular basis the way Bowen Islanders are. And it doesn't mean they're not going to be able to get on. It means that it's going to be the same for them as it is now, but it's going to be easier for residents.
But anytime you make something easier and remove a time cost, the volume goes up. So some of the arguments I've heard against resident priority boarding are that the commuters in a large number of cases are the ones who are fluent in the system. They know how to work the transit. They know how to use alternative means to travel, and their guests don't. Their guests are coming with a suitcase. So anyway, I'm only being devil's advocate because I've heard all these pitches back and forth, and I don't have a clear vision on the proper way to execute it. And I hope that if we're asking for something, we're also thinking about what are we asking for. So I think the working group sounds like a great idea, but I just pass along my encouragement and a little bit of a warning that I think this is a hard thing to do.
Okay.
Okay, we done with ferries for now?
Yes.
Okay. 8.2, council and committees. We have the UBCM highlights.
So I think we've covered all that.
I don't have
Okay.
anything else to add.
Staff update. Patrick or Drew?
Nope, I already made my update. Nothing more from me.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
we
Can
can.
hear you. We can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Just provide a quick update on multi-use path. So we do have a number of grants in play, and one of them, the BC Active Transportation Grant from a couple of years ago, expires in March of 2025. So it's important that we construct something to advance the program and also to keep some momentum. So we have tendered the construction of another portion of the path extending from where it ends just past Artisan Lane. another 300 meters or so up the road as an off-road path that would then join up with Grafton Road. And then past that point, the terrain becomes too challenging to continue as an off-road path, and really to do anything on the north side of Grafton Road. So we would have to widen the road on the south side, which I think we've discussed at previous meetings. And so that's going to require some additional grant money. We do have the same BC Active Transportation grant comes around every year. It's $500,000 and it's due in October. These applications require Class C cost estimates, which we could develop and essentially do have for continuing for the program of continuing west towards Grafton Lake. There has been suggestions from some members of council and others that we should be maybe leaving this alone due to the challenge and cost of it, and building other parts of the path elsewhere on the island, which is not necessarily a bad approach. We do have the issue that we haven't gotten we haven't advanced the design work and the cost estimating needed to apply for these grants for another portion. We don't have another piece that's ready to go. So I think our approach is going to be to go for that money, and similarly for the similar approach for the TransLink money, which comes around every year. So by the end of well, before the end of this year anyway, we will have another piece constructed. That path will extend further west, a few hundred more meters, and link up to Grafton Road so that it's usable. So that's where we're at with the multi-use path. If there's any thoughts or questions around that, that'd be welcome.
Judy?
So once we're done with the 300 meters, and that's takes up the money that needs to be spent by March of 25, then we don't have any design details and we don't have any other grants in hand. Is that right?
No, we do have some additional grants also. We have some, we've been accumulating our TransLink grants over the years. So we do have some TransLink money. We also have a BCAT grant, a BC Active Transportation grant, that has to be spent on a portion of the path past Charlie's Lane, between Charlie's Lane and Grafton Lake, because that's what we'd applied for. We asked them if we could take that and apply it to the next piece, you know, advancing up towards Charlie's Lane, but they didn't agree to that. They did say we could apply for future grants for that piece. So we do have other grants. It's just not, and we've also applied for the capital stream of the Rural Transit Solutions Fund.
Heard back from them?
So we haven't heard anything. We applied at the beginning of this year, and we haven't heard anything. We've asked for some information on when to expect those decisions and some information, and we haven't gotten anything useful in response. So I don't know what to expect. But we do need additional grant money wherever we can find it.
Does the additional design work cost us? Can that be the TransLink savings?
We can. I think we have the ability to use the TransLink money for design work, at least a part of it. So
And we need to pay somebody to do that.
Yes, we would need to hire a consultant to help us with that.
Well, my vote continues to be that we should pursue one of the less expensive options, not in a continuous path, that would provide passing opportunities further down the island. And I'd be happy to recommend that, John?
Yeah, I think Patrick answered the question that I had earlier, but I just want to be clear. So we get a grant to assist in building this path, but it's restricted to these 200 yards or whatever it is. We can't use it to build the path somewhere else. Is that what I just heard? Because that seems kind of insane to me.
Yeah, it does seem a little crazy. We did ask about taking the money that we'd applied to do a certain portion and applying it to a different portion. And what they told us is you can, if you don't have enough to do the whole section that you applied for, you can just do a part of it and apply for other grants in the future to finish it. But we couldn't take that money and go, somewhere else completely.
Okay.
But we do have, I think, if we built, there is a relatively easy portion that could be built just east of Grafton Lake. That we do have grant money that we can put towards that. And then we could try and pull something together for another portion of the path further west in terms of the grant applications coming up.
Okay.
It would just be a bit tight in terms of timing.
Yeah, no, well, my personal position is the same as Tyler. Like, to me, anything we can do to just get something built that's buildable, and we're, down the road, we can sort out the hard parts, but let's do what we can. But I realize you're trying to do that, so, and the bureaucrats are making it tougher, obviously.
Judy?
Do we
and
have,
Betty?
sorry, do we have the design part for Grafton? Because that's a really good stretch for passing. If we had the people off the road.
Which part of Grafton are you referring to?
You know, that long straight stretch from basically the old fire hall to Harding Road?
We have some preliminary design for that. Yeah, and we could probably pull together some Class C cost estimates for that stretch and focus on that instead of the Charlie's Lane portion.
And some or all of that is being paid by John Reed, right?
John Reed is constructing the portion from the Forster Lane, the water treatment plant road, up to Harding Road.
Right.
So that was another impetus of trying to advance the path up to Grafton Lake, is that, not only is that a key destination where there's a lot of development happening and recreation opportunities, it also links up with about 800 meters of path that's being built on a similar time frame or shortly thereafter by the developer. So you would end up, you get to Grafton Lake and then you've essentially gotten to Harding Road.
Mhm.
Betty?
I just wanted to underline the comment about really looking for places where cars can get by groups of riders, because it's becoming, as the tourism gets larger, so do the big crowds of bike riders, and we're just set up for a bad accident sooner or later. So I think it would be really good to actually methodically look for those places that are opportunities and look for matches of money to build them.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's changed even in the time we've been talking about this.
Yeah.
The whole nature of the request for this trail has changed. This has gone from a way to encourage people to get onto bikes to now we need a way to manage all the people that are on bikes.
Yeah.
And the interactions with cars. So, I mean, I guess it's good. I don't think it's Bowen Islanders primarily using the trail that we envisioned. But hopefully it's less ferry traffic and cars.
Definitely a destination tourism approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the challenges with building short sections, is that is getting people to actually use them. So if you have a continuous stretch, people are likely to get off the road and ride on the path. If you've got short sections interspersed, are people actually going to get off the road and go onto those paths?
I definitely agree with that concern, being that it's a two-way path. Like, bikes aren't likely to cross the road for a short section of trail to get off of the roadway. But hopefully, at least in the more convenient direction, they would slide over onto the path.
Right.
Patrick, what do you need from us, or what's helpful from the committee?
I think the comments that you've been making are helpful in that you're really reinforcing the point that some counselors have made about what we should be trying to focus on, and maybe just working our way from east to west isn't serving our best interests at this time. I don't think I really need anything in particular. It was more of an update, and hearing your thoughts is helpful.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. We had 8.4 other business. I don't believe we have any other business. We have section 9 is the information items. I think we've gone over those a little bit. I don't think we have any questions on those. We have a question period, but there's no members of the public. We have the next meeting, section 11, for Tuesday, November 5th at 6 p.m. Does that still work for everybody? At least as well as any day?
Sorry, November the what?
5th?
At 6 p.m. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes, probably.
Okay. Well, then I'll move to adjourn early, since we scrapped that section of the agenda, unless Tim and Judy change their mind and want to talk about it now.
I'm done.
Okay, so I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.
Seconded.
Third.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Sarah. Well done.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
Thanks.
And Patrick, and Drew.
Great.
Bye.
I think Sarah's first though with us, so.
Sure.
Goodbye.